Gentlemen, sorry about the delay. Season 1, Episode 4, Sanctuary. This is the episode, this is the breather episode, and I cannot help but notice it's the first episode that doesn't have the at the beginning of it. I'm wondering if that's a trend. Because I noticed there's another episode with no the at the beginning of it, which is Season 1, Episode 8. Anyways, this is the Seven Samurai in space. In swamp? Oh, it doesn't really quite have the same ring to it, does it? It is, though. There's nothing really wrong with that, as usual. Yeah, Clone Wars did this too. Actually, Star Trek has done this as well. Although, of course, Star Trek did a really, really bad take on this. So we'll see how they manage here. We see a peaceful village, and immediately can tell things are about to go to hell. We also notice, and I noticed this too, I even wrote it down in my notes, that the shots are coming up to down, like the shots are like this, angled downwards. That actually got me really curious about what was going on, and at first I thought maybe they had a ship or something. Obviously they just have the walker. So the Marauders show up, who are just robbing supplies and food, which is the exact same thing that Kylo should have been doing. That would be interesting to dovetail things. Just several First Order people show up and start robbing supplies. Yeah, the orcs show up. Yeah, they're just pirates. They're just pirates. There's quite a few of them, and near as I can tell, they're just robbing these people of food. Which I suppose makes a degree of sense. What species were they? Orcs. So naturally, we have to then take a brief breather moment. There's this bit where, Baby Yoda's messing with stuff. Mess. He says, "Stop touching that." And then there's this wonderful tidbit where Baby Yoda is staring at him, staring at the Mandalorian. Reaches behind himself, not breaking eye contact, and touch. That's so true. That's so true. There's also this wonderful bit, a little bit overplayed, where he's like, all right, you're going to stay here, stay right here. You're not going to touch anything. You're just going to be here. You're going to stay here, okay? Stay here, right here. What you're going to do is you're going to stay here, okay? Okay, he goes to leave. Baby Yoda's right there. It's very obvious of a setup, but it's still got a laugh out of me, I will completely admit. So yeah, Seven Samurai. Mandalorian shows up, immediately draws attention. Of course he does. Cara Dune notices him immediately. Weird thought. He offers the proprietor of the inn several credits for some broth and for, just some attention. What use do they have of credits? Like, think about that for a second. Doesn't that just feel kind of weird? Anyways, so we see he has a thermal mode in his vision, so at the very least we know he has at least some kind of thing going on for his visor. That's cool. And there's this fight between him and Cara, which I'd like to call it a good fight, but I'm not a good liar. It's just, I'm sorry to keep hitting this same point over and over. It's just over-edited. It's a decent establishing fight of the fact that she's got some chops, because she's able to hang with someone who has armor and kit on, while having neither. Also, neither of them draw their blaster until the initial fight is over with. It is also very forced, yeah. It's just, okay. I do, however, have to admit that the part of the fight that worked best for me was the comedy. There's 3 times this episode has nailed comedy well, because they're like, and there's this sipping sound, and they both just kind of look over, and Baby Yoda's just there, sipping his soup. And I do like his rejoinder. You want a soup? See, that's a good question, Hazardous. I would say the specific choreography is not particularly good, and the filming is not particularly good. So, whether the actual core fight works or not, it is a little bit too forced, but it also makes sense. I don't know. I know I feel like I'm a broken record here, but I feel like with a little bit more polishing past, a couple more rounds through the meeting, we might have been able to really polish this and make it pop. And yes, I know that, oh god, what's her stupid name? Garino? Cena Garino, something like that? Gina Carano, there we go, is actually an MMA fighter. So, You could have done something with that instead of this over-edited garbage. I mean, come on. You've already got someone up there. Get someone else in the suit who knows what they're doing. Moving on. I'm sorry. It feels like a waste of her talents, doesn't it? You bring in an MMA fighter and then you do that with her? It's not like she isn't portrayed as competent pretty much the entire time. But then, it obviously sounds like I'm complaining, and that's because I am. But then immediately after that, we see the first hint of something that this whole episode has. Good dialogue. If you've been paying attention, I've been complaining about the dialogue the entire show so far, the first 3 episodes. But a lot of the dialogue in this episode just suddenly pops, like out of absolutely nowhere. I don't know if they switched writers or had more time to work on it, or what. But there's a lot of good, quiet implication without the need to drag things too far out or explain things too far in. Like, for example, there's this one bit, I actually wrote this down. Yeah, mopping up after Endor went after ex-Imperial warlords. Dropships, no support. Then politics got involved. Protecting delegates, suppressing riots. And she says it casually and moves right past it. And the episode doesn't bother to sit and draw attention to it because it doesn't need to. But those lines say so much about that transition from Galactic Empire to New Republic, don't they? This woman was a shock trooper. There's a lot of implication just in that very statement. The fact that she was sent in on dropships to areas they needed to, the hot zones, that says a lot it needs to. Sent in without support, by the way. And then we get the implications of what's been happening with regards to the New Republic and how things have been going politically over there. And it's just like, oh, really? Now, I'm going to go and admit something. And I've actually talked about this at the end of the Andor stuff, if you remember. I feel like turning the New Republic into the Republic 2.0 was a mistake. I get why they did it. I get that there's stuff that you can do with that. I get that there's interesting directions you could take that kind of story arc. I just prefer what they did in the EU, where the New Republic was a mess of a bunch of people trying to make a new government, instead of just going back to default, which is what they did. It's just the Republic again. Now, Clay says they're doing something with it. Forgive me, but evidence? Can you name something where they're actually doing anything with the fact that they're deciding to just go back to the frickin' Republic again? I mean, I cannot be the only person who was legitimately angry, actually angry, when they renamed the Rebellion to the Rebellion to Restore the Republic. Do you remember that? Because I remember that. It's in Season 3. Oh, okay. That's... okay. I'll take a step back from that, then. Yes, Sawwood. Yeah, that was a rename. The Rebel Alliance was called that originally for a frickin' reason. And that's all it was, the Rebel Alliance. The Alliance to Restore the Republic. Oh my god. You're probably irritated at me for that. Let me try to explain a little bit. One of the really, really big plot points, setting points, thematic points, is that the Republic was a rotting, dying beast. So forgive me for paraphrasing Cara in KOTOR, for God's sakes. The Republic was a failed polity. It was already corrupt. It was already decadent. It was already problematic. Then Palpatine showed up, right? As has been pointed out many times, Palpatine wasn't someone who walked in to the Federation of Planets and turned it into the Dominion. No. He walked into this mess and was like, oh, I could take advantage of that, and then did. Like, it's been pointed out, if Palpatine just suddenly magically was never born, any other powerful individual or Sith absolutely would have done the same thing he did. Probably not exactly to the same extent or to the same quality, but still, someone was going to take power in that era, guaranteed. I mean, I've said many times that Dooku was very likely to be the person who would be the Sith Lord if he didn't happen to be born in the same era that included the most powerful Sith Lord in history. Sorry, I'm getting way down the weeds here. Forgive me. Let's focus on the episode. Regardless of the fact that I don't like this, let's focus on the episode at hand, because what she talks about is exactly what I just was complaining about. that the new Republic is just the Republic. It's just the Republic again. Protecting delegates, knocking over warlords, suppressing riots. That says all it needs to, right there. What a waste. What a goddamn waste. Yeah, and yeah, also, excuse me, thank you, Hazardous. Terrible allocation of resources. You're going to take this woman, who clearly was signed up to fight some imps, and turn her into a glorified honor guard? A flag carrier? Jesus Christ. But the point I'm trying to get at here, despite my distaste for everything after Return, the fact is this still does a really good job of building up the world. In fact, actually, if I can be blunt for a second, this one episode does more to establish the New Republic era better than the entire sequel trilogy did, and I stand by that. I was thinking the same thing, Hazardous. This is a woman and a squad who is used to doing things without support, without backup, and behind enemy lines. This is the kind of woman who should be active now. We know there's an Imperial remnant. We know that the First Order is being constructed at this point. I'm pretty sure the Battle of Aftermath, which I can't remember the name of the planet, has already happened at this point, right? I should look that up. Maybe I shouldn't say that without looking it up. Let me double check that. Hang on. I think it was Jakku, yeah. Let me double check here. Blah, 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 blah. What year did this? Oh, yeah, no. We're 4 years out. We're 4 years out from the Battle of Jakku. I was right. So you get my point, right? We know at this point the First Order is in the middle of being constructed. I believe that, Hazardous. Yeah, by this point, Luke's probably on his island. Long since retired and doing his own thing. And we know there's warlords and mercenaries out there. I hate to give this away, but I have already been spoiled that there is at least one warlord we're going to be seeing on this show. The reason I know is because I happen to follow the actor, and he's a great actor. And so, real talk, I was looking something up for Far Cry 6, and I was just like, oh, what else has he been in lately? Huh? And that's how I found out. I don't even know how to pronounce his name, and I don't want to mispronounce it, because he's so good. But yeah, you probably know who I'm talking about. Point being, this says a lot about how hilariously, pathetically incompetent that the New Republic is. And again, does it in a good way, highlights it in a good way. In fact, this actually does a great job and adheres itself to a line that was said earlier. There's this bit where Grief turned to the Mandalorian and said, why don't you just go ahead and report this to the Republic? And his response is, well, that's a joke. Now, that could have been a throwaway line about, oh, we're in the Outer Rim, who cares? But now that we have this additional piece of the puzzle, we can see that the Mandalorian sees there's no point in calling attention to the New Republic out here. Because they're a joke. So he's out. He's decided, well, she's already got dibs. Notice he respects her for that. It's a nice little touch. So he decides he's going to go and take his ship and peace out, and the villagers find him. This is when the Seven Samurai thing really starts to come to the foreground here. Yeah, they're literally demilitarizing. I know it's realistic. I don't care. It's so dumb. I want to smack them. Across their stupid faces. All right. Because military is evil, right? God freaking damn it. Public demilitarizing is pretty much the reason that the First Order and the Last Order, by the way, both exist. Hi. Yeah, let's just ask Starfleet about mothballing their fleet. Christ. For those of you not aware, the reason I say it's realistic is this has actually happened several times in real-life history, where after a fairly major war, a particular polity said, yeah, we're just going to kind of shut down the military. I should probably mention that literally every time that's happened in real-life history, that's been a bad idea. Pulling down funding? That makes sense, right? You're not in active war. Just pulling down the military? Okay, yeah, I could really go down the rabbit hole on this, but I'd rather not. Let's focus on the Seven Samurai here. The Seven Bounty Hunters? So the villagers try to help, get him to help. We put together, we have money. Where are they getting credits? I think my favorite tidbit about all of this is the one... Exactly, Lord Aramont. The one thing... You know what, I'm sorry. I'm going to go down the rabbit hole one more step. Just one. Just one. Is that okay? Just one step down. How many of you are familiar with the Sengoku Jidai? It's a period of Japanese history, a fairly long period of Japanese history, which I've studied quite a bit because I find it fascinating, and I just keep cycling back to it for some reason. Warring states. Whole bunch of people who had a large professional military. And when I say one professional military, I mean like 50. Like everybody. Like there were so many military personnel that at some point in that history, it has been argued, and the reason I say it's been argued because we don't have exact records, that some people were starting to starve up because they just didn't have enough farmers to till the fields at certain points. Like everybody had a goddamn blade and a suit of armor and were fighting in some army or another and taking food from people who they just won over and or kill. It was bad. But here's the important part. Skip forward a little bit until Tokugawa ended up pretty much on top of that particular heap. One of the first things he did was he was like, okay, I did it. We did it. Okay. Shoot, I have a huge chunk of military personnel with arms and armament who suddenly have no one to fight. And he actually realized that that was a problem and that he would have to deal with that. So he reorganized them into a standing army and said, let's go conquer China. Now, we all know how that went. But it is telling that one of the first major changes he made to the Japanese government was organizing a standing army in order to deal with the fact that he had tons and tons of military left over after this nonsense, right? So, tell me, what do you think happened to all of the military personnel and fighters on the ground and you know, the ensigns and the ship workers and the ship dock people and the tons and tons and tons of personnel that were part of the military who just got mothballed by the Republic? Yeah. Anyways, I said I'm going to go one step. Oh, it's Hideyoshi. Excuse me, not Tokugawa. Hideyoshi, my bad. I admittedly get several of their names confused, and it's just me sucking. Anyways, so clearly, this is a terrible, terrible idea. And hey, there's a bunch of pirates over here who, near as I can tell, just live here, right? Like, all they're doing is just hanging out, raiding these people periodically to steal their food, and then going back to their hideout and going back to their everyday life. Like, this is just their life. This is their everyday existence here. Not that I'm saying that these two facts are related anyway. Anyways. So the villagers try to hire them. Try to hire Mandalorian. Like, hey, help me out here. Okay, yep, nope, that tracks. Yeah, pretty much as it is. What I find most amusing is they offer him so much, and yet they only have one thing worthwhile that he cares about, that he actually, you know, is like, oh, sure. They have a village in the middle of nowhere and are willing to offer him lodging and food. Okay. He still takes the credits, though. Why? Because he's not an idiot. He is walking into an unknown situation and, smartly, decides to go ahead and buy some backup. So he goes, throws the credits at her, and says, hey, track me up. And he talks her into it pretty smoothly. This is either going to be a milk run, or it's going to be some actual action. Either way, it's not going to be any real problem for us. And both of them are completely smooth on this. Sure, whatever. Meanwhile, the kids love Baby Yoda. This just in. The sun continues to rise in the morning. There's a fascinating little tidbit here. There's a lot of little details. I should probably mention this episode was directed by Bryce Dallas Howard, her first episode for this, and one of her first directing gigs ever. It's doubly interesting to me because she certainly seems to be taking after her father in directorial style. In fact, I would be shocked if she didn't learn at least some of her directing tricks from her dad, right? Ron Howard, for those of you not aware. There's this wonderful bit where the Mandalorian goes to walk in, stops just off camera. Like you can see a little bit of him off the camera. Pause. Pause. And then he is invited in. Refuses to walk in until he is explicitly invited, naturally showing that he's a vampire. Then he goes in and walks in. We also see that children continue to be a weak point for him, which makes perfect sense. We get a nice long shot of the rice field. Oh, by the way, they're growing freaking rice. I know, it's space rice and it's actually fish, but no, those are rice patties. I'm sorry. We also see the there's so many references to Seven Samurai here that I'm just gonna start skipping over them if that's okay. She has this line. They're growing rice. She says, I noticed you didn't eat out there, so I thought I'd bring you food and I'd leave it here for you to eat later. That demonstrates not just, being thoughtful, but that even if she doesn't know why he hasn't taken off his helmet, she understands at least the concept and is being very respectful about it and has figured out in very, very, very short period of time why he's acting the way he does. Okay, I'm actually completely on board with this. Again, the dialogue has just gotten a lot smarter out of absolutely nowhere. We also, Ron Howard was one of the directors on Solo. Let's be clear about that. Because Solo was that much of a mess that it had multiple directors. Anyways. So I feel like, remember how I complained about those flashbacks in the previous 2 episodes? This is one of the biggest reasons why I feel that was a misstep. This is the moment to exposit on his backstory. In fact, he does. He flat out says, my parents were killed. He doesn't say they were by the Separatists or that it was during the Clone Wars, but they were, and it was. And the Mandalorians took him in. He's not born. He's not by blood. Okay. That's a lot of exposition in a very short period of time. It also gets across a lot of his characterization. Why he is such a weak spot for children. Duh. Why he keeps wanting to respect the foundlings. Duh. Why he's so adhered to the baby. Duh. Probably one of the biggest reasons why he was willing to go ahead and stand up for this village. So how old is he? That's a good question. How old is Pedro Pascal? Yeah, he's also very much alert. Of course he is. He always is. It's also the first time we mention the significance of the helmet. I bring that up because if you've been paying very careful attention... God, is he that much younger than Mirax? If you pay very careful attention, he hasn't taken the helmet off this whole time. Like, I know that sounds like a weird thing, but Boba Fett never took his helmet off back in the original trilogy, and nobody really cared. It was just a thing. And it's not like Boba Fett has any problems taking his helmet off, too. It's mostly in the books, but it's still a thing. Jango usually had his helmet on, but was willing to take it off several times, too. So, like, the fact that what I'm trying to say is the fact that he hasn't taken his helmet off isn't really noteworthy until this scene, right? Ergo, we look at this scene and we understand now why he has very specifically not been taking his helmet off, because it's actually a thing. And in fact, this whole episode will bit by bit have a little bit of background exposition about the nature of his religion as zealotry. And of course, why he is so adherent to that particular ritual, that cult custom, which makes perfect sense, right? After all, he was adopted by these people who took him in and rescued him from the chaos of the Clone Wars. So, what I'm trying to say is that some people who are born into a particular belief strata aren't necessarily going to, be super adherent to it. Someone who is adopted into it, rescued by that group, probably going to be a lot more adherent to it. Looking at my notes. So, I love this upcoming sequence. I really, really do. This is when this episode starts to actually get good for me. You know what I mean. Because then we find a giant, there's this build-up, and we've already seen the blaster shots, and we've already seen the trees that are knocked over. And then we see a giant freaking footprint. And it's an ATST. A literal scout walker. That's actually what it stands for. It's a scout walker. But the way they react to it, this is Yet again, the power of zooming the camera in, the power of bringing things down to a low level. Because all of a sudden, one individual ATST is actually a huge deal. It's a big deal. They even make this point, nothing on this planet can knock over those legs. Or can destroy those legs. And they never dent its armor, not even once. It's awesome, actually. Yeah, no, they made an ATST a big freaking... Yeah, this is like the TIE Fighter back in Andor. One TIE Fighter, one ATST, and it's a big deal. Of course it is. And no wonder these pirates are able to hang at the weight class that they are. Because they have a ringer. This is awesome. I love how they do this. And both Cara and Mando immediately say, all right, we're out. Like, first thing. The only thing I don't like about this is that they turn it around a little bit too quickly, but it continues to make sense. She obviously gives a damn. She likes fighting imps, and she is a generally good person. She did sign up for the rebellion, after all. And Mandalorian is trying to save the kids. Remember, that's one of his weak points. So both of them turning their minds on this makes a degree of sense. I also love the bit that, who of you knows how to shoot? And the only one who raises his hand is, I think her name is Omera. What the hell is her backstory? We never find out, do we? Don't tell me. But yeah, the mother knows how to shoot, and is also the one who's been clearly a little bit more informed about things than she gets across. No, they want to hold on to their land, and that's fine. That's whatever. People in their land, I swear. But no, nobody cares about any of that. All anyone cares about is the ATST. We have a training montage with some really weird music. Oh yeah, they specifically call her a widower. I caught that. She also has proper posture and aim when she's shooting. And we also have a nice one, too. Cara and the Mandalorian go to, steal something. Not steal something. God, I'm getting distracted. They go to ambush the enemy camp and kill as many pirates as they can while they're there. Nice 1-2 shot. He's out in the open because he's the one in the armor. She's the one who then ambushes. They set up the explosive. They start doing what they can. And then the walker makes its first real appearance. Covered in wear and rust and mud and dust. But that thing does come across as being properly terrifying. I will give so much praise to the cinematography on display here. They make an ATST look terrifying. And yeah, the red lighting is fantastic because it works for two completely separate reasons. One, out of universe, it makes the thing look like it has these giant red glowing eyes, which are staring out from the darkness. In universe, the pirates probably use this as an intimidation tactic, deliberately. That's actually, and there's the whole thing about red light allowing you to look at dark. So yeah, no, you could just feel this thing. And it makes so much sense, and it's awesome. Yeah, this thing is an honest-to-God, proper military firepower. So, rush away. Red lighting, the ATST coming through the line of the trees. Also interesting that the pirate camp is literally in walking distance of their village, which once again gets across the idea that these people are probably just have functionally settled here, and they make a living by robbing the village every now and again. I know. Imagine the Battle of Hoth, except, like, done in this style. Just, ooh, I could picture that. So the peasants all have the spears. They're ready to go. Of course it's spears. This is the Seven Samurai, after all. I'm joking. Spears make perfect sense for this circumstance. Fight. They try to pull the thing into the pit. They're trying to knock it over. And again, their whole plan hinges on knocking this thing over. You caught that, right? Can I share a weird story with you? Back in the day, when I used to watch Return of the Jedi, especially with my friends, I would point to a specific moment for the Battle of Endor, on the ground specifically, that I always pointed to as the moment the battle turned. And that was when Chewbacca and the two Ewoks took a walker and started using it for their side. Even dinky little child me looked at that as like a big turning point, because it made so much sense to young me that the moment you managed to take one of the functionally walking artillery that these things are, that all of a sudden you had a fighting chance against stuff that otherwise you just kind of don't. Now, my friends always pointed out that I was a stupid, worthless moron who deserved to die, because obviously it doesn't change anything. Like, none of the battle has even swung or altered or shifted in a given direction. The Ewoks are just running over these ATSTs, and they were right, of course. But what I've never forgotten is that sense of how that probably should have gone. How this actually should have been. Because it should have been the turn of the battle, isn't it? A couple of Ewoks and Chewbacca managing to turn one of the walkers should have been a big deal in that battle, and instead it was mostly just there for comedy, as, you know, poor Chewbacca is trying desperately to deal with this whole thing. What am I getting at with all this? This entire battle here hinges on them taking down the walker in pretty much the exact same manner that I thought they were doing all the way back in Return of the Jedi. Once they knock that thing over, the battle's over. Once they do that, that's it. And all the pirates know it, too. They run within seconds of that thing going down. And up until then, you notice they even use it correctly. Did you catch that? The walker doesn't actually advance on the village. It just stays back here, providing support. And all of this makes perfect sense, because all you have to do is replace the ATST with a tank. And all of a sudden, this lines up perfectly. So they knock that sucker over. Good bridge episode. Even though the poor frog is eaten alive. It's okay. He spit it out. He spit it out. We also get a little bit more exposition on the nature of his particular zealotry. For like I don't know what word to use. Belief system? Religion? Cult? I don't know. What happens if you take off the helmet? Oh, nothing. I just can't put it on again. Ah. And that actually reminds me of something. This is going to be a deep cut. How many of you have ever read Dr. McNinja? Everyone in the chat. Huh? In Dr. McNinja, believe it or not, they belong to a clan of ninjas. And there's actually a cultural point. It's a ridiculous, fun, silly, zany comic series. I highly recommend it if you're interested in something that is just ludicrous, and that's kind of the point. But there's this point where the ninjas actually talk about how they can't really take off their masks, ever. It's their final refuge. If they ever take off the mask, then they're gone. They're lost to their tribe. They're lost to their clan. Everyone else, shuns and turns away from them forever. And they now have their appearance revealed and can go into hiding. Like, that's their last refuge. It just got an immediate similar vibe there. And I feel like this comes from something that I don't know what from real life cultures, because I swear I've heard of this somewhere before. Either way, he's talking about leaving behind Baby Yoda, which of course he's not going to do. And he's talking about maybe staying behind with the widower. Implication. Which, of course, he's not going to do. Because then the magic tracker works. I'm sorry to nitpick. How do these magic trackers work? Because they have to work at range, right? There's no way that they don't work at range. Otherwise, they wouldn't know to go to the planet. Never mind the portion of the planet. Never mind homing in on the village and then actually finding the sucker. What is it homing in on that it can detect that from that kind of a range is kind of what I'm getting at here. Yeah, they shoved a beacon down Baby Yoda's throat? You'd think they would notice that? Or maybe it would pass at some point? You just fly around space with the beeper up at your head. Okay. So if you force me to actually come up with my own answer for this, I actually do have an answer, but it doesn't fully make sense. Because the problem is we know they have those trackers for any kind of targets, right? Like, it was shown in the first episode, I believe, that they could just detect people based on anything. But if you put a gun to my head, I'd restructure a few things, and I'd say that these are very specifically Force tech. That they are homing in on particularly large midichlorian counts. In other words, they're not actually homing in on Baby Yoda at all. They're just homing in on particularly large locuses of the Force. So that obviously could lead to some, misleading information or bad leads or whatever. But since the only large amount of Force concentration within the region is Baby Yoda. There you go. The problem with that is everything. No, I didn't forget that, actually, Nerozaz. I didn't forget that at all. Because the Mandalorian was given specific coordinates so he could get close enough so it could work. So, how the hell did this rando dude end up on rando planet to get close enough to use it here? Never explained, of course, because it's because plot. This continues to be a thing for me. There's a lot of because plot here. These trackers work because plot. They needed a guy here to force Baby Yoda to go with the Mandalorian. As long as he's here, he won't be safe and the village won't be safe. So he's got to go. How? Doesn't matter. And that is the truthful answer there. The creators of this story probably don't even care about the answer to this question. They just wanted an excuse to make Baby Yoda have to go with the Mandalorian. And there you go. That's a good point, 040. It gets louder. It beeps faster the closer you are to a main character. And yeah, Hazardous and Nerazaz both point out, like, this is also a thing that he used in order to track completely the other guy, right? The guy who was clearly not a Jedi of any way, shape, or sort. It feels like such an unnecessary step is what I'm trying to get at here. Because for me, as a writer and a creator, obviously I need Baby Yoda to go with Mandalorian. Okay, sure, fine. Have it be a choice. We've kind of already done this if you're paying attention. Stay here, okay? No problem. Stay, stay, turn around, he's there. There's your answer. It would even be a bookend, because it would be referring to the scene at the beginning of the episode. You'd have to restructure it a little bit, but just have the Baby Yoda refuse to stay and then go with him. Done. You don't have to have this weird thing where someone has a plot detector, which then is just beep, 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 right? You don't need that. It's unnecessary. Yeah, he tries to leave him, and Baby Yoda's just like, nope. And yeah, he's 50 years old. He's got consent. He can say yes or no. Do you want to stay here? Okay, cool. And you can play it up for drama, and you can play it up for character, but the point is, it feels like a weird misstep. And that's the whole show in a nutshell, isn't it? It's like they can't quite figure out how to connect the threads. It keeps being the thing, isn't it? The connective tissue is just strange in this show. Because then there's individually good scenes. Did you catch the scene where Omera gently and very carefully reaches up to the Mandalorian's helmet and starts to raise it? Now, we have just gotten the exposition that if he takes that sucker off, he can't put it back on. In other words, that's commitment. And the way she's acting, it acts like she knows that. Like she understands that her taking off this helmet means he is committing to staying and probably to her. He even hesitates for a second before he stops her and says, no, I'm sorry, I can't. It's a good scene. That's a powerful scene. Yeah, she knows it and she wants him to stay. And she is visibly disturbed that he decides not to, but accepts it. This works. This is a good scene. What the hell's with this other thing? Sorry, you get my point, right? The connective tissue on this show is so strange. We even have a fake-out gunshot. I hate fake-out gunshots. By the way, that's the second fake-out gunshot in this show. The first one was when the IG-11 raised the gun to the Baby Yoda, and then it cuts the Mandalorian, and we hear the gunshot! And then the IG-11 falls to the ground dead. It's the same thing. It's the fake-out gunshot. Oh my god, I'm going to shoot you! Oh no! But it was this other person you didn't even see. It's cool. It's cool. Who was the murderer? It was Joe! Yeah, we gotta have unnecessary drama for 2 seconds. Issues aside. It was Joe! Issues aside. I still enjoyed this episode, overall. I do think this is probably the first episode I would say is an undebatably orange. Like, this is the first one I'm just solidly... That's an orange episode. It had some good moments. It had some good sequences... Or, no, sorry, the opposite of sequences. It had some good action. Solidly orange. Solidly orange. Fun, interesting. I'm with it. Probably the best episode overall so far. I actually meant to write down pluses and minuses as I went, and I sort of spaced. I was very distracted. So I do apologize for that. And yeah, Bryce Dallas Howard makes an ATST scary, which sounds like such a minor thing until you realize how much of a goddamn joke those things are. Credit? Well, credit is due. Yeah, I'm going to watch another. Absolutely. 100%. The next episode... I also noticed, by the way, that we clearly had an arc in 1 through 3, and then 4 is a breather. 4 doesn't really have anything to do with anything. It's just some character and some world building, and 7 Samurai. So I'm wondering if we're going to follow that trend, because we've got 4 episodes till the end of Season 1. Gunslinger, Prisoner, Reckoning, Redemption. Listen. No, listen. Baby Yoda. Baby Yoda. So I'm going to go ahead and pop into the next one. Let's see how long it is. The next one is Season 1, Episode 5, The Gunslinger. And it is... Oh, it's a shorter one. It's a much shorter one. This is only like 26 minutes long, looks like. Something like that. I've been very confused about the length of some of these things. Either way, I'll see you in a bit. No breaks. I'm just going to jump right into it.